Team news first of all, Jim?
Yeah, I mean everybody's came back from the international break in good spirits. You know, the boys that were away, no injuries thankfully to contend with, and Owen Sturton's back into the group this week training. So the only longer term injuries that we have at the moment is obviously Ross Graham and Max Waters, and both those guys are making great strides in the rehab, and we would like to think that those two would be back in with the group the middle of next month, hopefully.
In terms of how the season started for you, Jim, it's been a bit stop-start in terms of international breaks, and sadly there's no more European games for you this season. Is it what you expected it to be, or where you expected?
I think we've been a little bit inconsistent, you know, if I'm being honest. You know, I think it's been good. I think the points return that we have at the moment, I think, is a little bit short of what we would have hoped for, and possibly what we feel we deserve. When I look back on some of the games, you know, we've led at home to Hearts, you know, and then lost the game. We were 3-1 up at Easter Road and ended up drawing the game. You know, I think if had we 3 or 4 more points on the board, I don't think anybody could have too many complaints. But you know, that's down to, you know, our own mistakes that we've made in those moments, and you know, they're things that we need to learn from. So I think consistency is key. You know, I think we've got to get back to defending properly, not conceding sloppy goals like we did last, you know, a couple of weeks ago against Livingston, gifting the opposition a goal they've not had to work too hard for. You know, things like that are so important in the upcoming game tomorrow against a good quality team. I know Rangers aren't in the position that they would want to be or expect to be, but you know, they're still very much a team full of quality individuals, and we can't afford to gift the opposition, you know, chances like we have done. So you know, I think to be in the top 6 is where we want to be, Brian. You know, come the end of the season, competing for those European places is what our aim is, but we know there's a hell of a long way to go. And I think the league itself as well has became a lot more competitive this season. You know, I think there's a lot of good coaches in the team. I think a lot of teams have made good investments in their playing squads as well, and you know, you can see that, I think, in terms of, you know, the results. You know, there's, you know, teams are picking up points against each other all of the time, but you know, we need to get consistency in our performances, and if we do that, that'll bring consistency in our results.
In fairness to yourself, Jim, I mean, you've brought in, there's a lot of new players here, and sometimes it can take players a little bit of time. When you're recruiting these players, what do you look for? Not just as football ability, is it people as well, in terms of how quickly you think they can adapt to life here in Scotland? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that goes into the recruitment process, and you know, we've brought in 14 new players in the summer. I don't think there's too many clubs in Europe that have done as much in terms of transfer business as we have, but there's always a risk with that. There's always a slight concern from a manager's point of view, you know, whether the players will settle in and adapt to life in Scotland quick enough. But I have to say, I couldn't be any more pleased with that aspect. You know, the players have really taken to the culture that we've tried to build here at the training ground, and you know, they've settled into life in Dundee brilliantly, and they're thoroughly enjoying their football, which is the most important thing. You know, I think we've had some really big performances in the early part of the season, in particular when you look back to the European games against Vienna, you know, performances against Hibs away, Aberdeen at home, and you know, tomorrow's game against Rangers will be no different. You know, that's the kind of levels that we need to get to, and those are the kind of levels that we want to perform at regularly.
Rangers have certainly not hit the heights that they would be expecting to be this season. Celtic probably similar. Jim, are clubs now maybe having a little bit more of a go at Rangers and Celtic, and maybe the fear factor that was there a couple of years ago? Well, so there's still dangerous clubs, obviously, but they're maybe not as dangerous as they were a couple of years ago.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, you know, Celtic and Rangers have, you know, clearly been the top 2 teams in the country for the last 40 years, I suppose. Nobody's ran them close in terms of trying to win the Scottish Premiership. Rangers have spent, you know, close to £30 million, I think, this summer. So there's not a club out with Celtic and Rangers that would have those resources and be able to make those types of investments. But what I do think has happened is that teams like ourselves have recruited really, really well. I think there's some really good coaches in the league as well, and you know, I think that brings the whole league that little bit closer together. I don't think it's a lack of respect or anything from the opposition. I just think there's better players within the league at the moment, and that's why you're seeing so many teams taking so many points off of each other. You know, the league is probably the most competitive it's been for a number of years.
In terms of recruitment, is data helping?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, we brought in Ross Goodwin to be that head of recruitment, and the data is a big factor of what our recruitment strategy is all geared around. And you know, thankfully up to now, it's served us really well with the quality of player that we've been able to bring to the club. You know, everything has got to be done to, you know, within the resources that you have available to you. And I think, you know, our own supporters and, you know, the people out there now that have watched Dundee United a number of times can see what we're trying to do in terms of adding quality and adding athleticism, but also adding players that will hopefully one day have a real sell-on value. And that's, you know, that's a good business philosophy, I think.
What do you make of Rangers, and what do you expect from them tomorrow? Still in a little bit of flux in terms of having a new man in charge.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, obviously, I'm always disappointed to see any manager, you know, lose their job, especially, you know, a young manager like Russell Martin, who, you know, has really had an unbelievable trajectory in the game when you consider where he, you know, first started at, to be managing in the English Premier League last year, and then to get the opportunity to manage at a club, you know, the size of Rangers. So yeah, I mean, I'm always disappointed to see anyone lose their job, but I think, you know, Rangers are a team that are full of quality. You know, they've got some very, very good players. I think they are in a false position at the moment. You know, we only need to think back to last year when, you know, Hibs around about this time were sitting bottom or second bottom in the league, and you know, went on an incredible run of results from November onwards, and obviously, you know, finished the second best team in the country. So we know Rangers are capable of doing that with the quality that they have in the forward line. You know, the good quality players like Raskin and that in the middle of the pitch. So, you know, they're a bit of a wounded animal at the moment. You know, supporters no doubt will be buoyant because they got what they wanted in the end, which is a change of manager, and we're expecting a completely different type of atmosphere tomorrow as what might have been a couple of weeks ago.
You mentioned earlier on about, you know, not giving away kind of sort of cheap goals. Is that imperative when you go to Ibrox, because that could maybe, you know, the crowd will be looking for something to latch on to as well, and it's kind of, you've got to keep it kind of, not give them that opportunity to kick-start their season that
yeah.
day.
No, of course. I mean, look, we've you know, every goal is avoidable, but I think, you know, if most people look back at the goals that we have conceded, there's been a number of mistakes in there that we need to eradicate, and we need to make sure we do that quickly, because, you know, it has cost us a number of points over the last few games. But, you know, nobody deliberately goes out there to make those types of mistakes. It's just decision making in the moment, and you know, that's something that the players will learn from. It's a relatively young group. I think we may have the youngest squad in the Premiership actually at this moment in time, so there's a little bit of inexperience and a little bit of naivety sometimes, but the players will only learn from the mistakes and will only get better. And absolutely, when you're going to a venue like Ibrox tomorrow against a good quality team like Rangers, then you can't afford to gift them any opportunities. So our decision making is going to have to be better, and you know, if Rangers do get opportunities, then we're going to need to make sure that they have to work incredibly hard for them. But, you know, the defensive structure is always, you know, a big part when you go to places like Ibrox and Parkhead. But at the same time, you know, I look at the players that we have in the forward areas, and I really believe that, you know, if we're performing to the levels that we're capable of, then we can most certainly cause Rangers a few problems of their own.
How do you prepare? There's a lot, I mean, imagine a lot of the 14 guys wouldn't have played at Ibrox before. You have to let them know what to expect. Is that part of the preparation this week as well?
Well, you know, of the signings that we made in the summer, the big draw is to come and play at places like Ibrox and Parkhead. You know, that is one of the selling points that we make, and that's the reason why a lot of them have came to Scotland. You know, to raise their profile, to play against big teams, and to perform well. And yeah, I mean, I suppose it could be a positive to the point where there's not that fear factor, because I think, you know, 12 or 13 of the 14 players we signed in the summer have never played at Ibrox before, so they don't know what to expect. I don't think there's any fear. I think there's a real sense of excitement and to go and play in that type of environment. So, hopefully the boys, show the best of themselves tomorrow. We've had a great week's training. The boys are in really good spirits, and we're going there with a lot of belief.
Jim, you mentioned data a bit earlier on. Presumably with this change in the dugout tomorrow, that makes your preparations and your team's preparations a bit harder when I suppose you don't really know what to expect from the man in the dugout.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our analysis this week has been kind of more geared around the individuals within the Rangers team, and of course, we always try and predict what we think the starting 11 is going to be, but with Russell Martin not in the dugout, it could be a completely different starting 11 to one that they've had before. It could be a completely different style of play. Russell had a real belief, and his teams all had an identity, if you want to call it that. You knew how they were going to build through the different stages of the game. So yeah, you could prepare for that, but obviously with him not being there now, we're not quite sure what to expect. So the main focus, as always every week, is on ourselves. 90% of our preparation is geared around what can we do, what can we learn better from previous performances, focusing on the strengths but also trying to improve some of the weaknesses that we've got, and then that small aspect of this is what Rangers are capable of, these are the key individuals within their team, and you win those individual battles, then I think you give yourself a great chance.
Stephen Smith was speaking this morning and saying that in the sessions that he's taken so far, he's tried to strip things back a bit and not overload the players with that information. Is that almost a worry for you guys that these players, that, as you mentioned, good quality players, could be playing with that bit more freedom?
Yeah, I mean, I made that point to our players in our meeting yesterday. If I was him, then with so little time to prepare for a game like tomorrow, they had 10 or 11 players, I think, away in international duty, similar to our guys. He wouldn't have had his whole squad available to him till yesterday, so there's not a great deal of time to work on things. So I would imagine they've pretty much just stripped it back to basics, and as you say, not overcomplicate the game, and that may lead to those players playing with a bit more freedom. But yeah, I mean, look, we don't know what to expect. As I said, we can only focus on ourselves, and make sure that we're doing our job properly in and out of possession. We're bringing an incredible travelling support with us as well. I think it's the third away game this season that we've managed to sell out, which is unbelievable. That shows you the backing that's there from our own supporters, and they're clearly coming with a belief that they think their team can get something at Ibrox, and we have to repay that faith that they're showing in us with a really good, solid performance.
Just a final one from me. I don't believe you've lost away from home this season so far. I guess, do you think that's a coincidence, or presumably it's a run that you'd like to keep going?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, we've performed really well in some difficult games. Away in Austria against Rapid Vienna, in a really hostile environment. The players, really enjoyed the occasion and rose to the occasion, and that's what tomorrow is going to be. Is going to be needed. But done the same at Easter Road against Hibs, another very good team. Should have won the game, and so I've got no fear about complacency or about nervousness or about the occasion getting the better of the players. That doesn't concern me in the slightest. I want us to play on the front foot. I want us to have a level of aggression without the ball, but a level of bravery and courage when we do have it, to show the quality that we're capable of bringing. And if we do that, then we give ourselves a brilliant chance. We know there's going to be moments in the game where we're going to have to dig deep and we're going to have to put our bodies on the line. But at the same time, I don't think Rangers will be expecting a game where they're going to have it all their own way. And we believe they certainly won't.